And then in terms of the errors, so we also need to understand what are the kind of errors, how are we going to manage the defects, what is the time to actually identify and separate the error and then have an action to correct the error. You might have heard just the other day, even yesterday and today as we speak, there was a news that came out about the error by the health department, the Public Health England, PHE, which actually committed a small error, and that resulted in about 16,000 odd numbers that have the cases that have not been reported on the COVID-19 deaths list, which is massive. And one of the reasons that was touted for that was the usage of Excel spreadsheet. I don't know how that really happened, but so that there is even a small defect in some case in the context of the tool that you're using could actually result in a massive error somewhere. How you're going to manage that, how you can actually come up with the recovery of that, and what is the source, and what is the type of error. The classification is it severe, is it just cosmetic, just that can be ignored or just touch upon the cosmetic defect, or is it something like a showstopper? Once something happens, the whole site goes down. So for example, a case in point is the Ticketmaster website. When they launched some of the concert of a very popular musician, they wanted to go live and they invited people to say that, yeah, start booking. And then the whole site went down because it could not bear the load. The load was what was a problem, and it was not scaled. It was not scaled enough to be able to take up that kind of hits, that kind of number of massive hits to the website. So in terms of process character, you also need to think in terms of what processes, what kind of languages, tools that you're using. Is it for Java? Is it for open source? Is it for example, you're talking about a house, building a house. Are you building a house? Is it a bungalow? Is it a small little detached house? Is it a series of houses? Is it a flat? Is it an apartment? Depending on that, your estimate would really vary. It also depends on quite a lot of other things. We'll go into the details later. So it does depend on the languages. It does depend on the platform, the tooling that you're using. It also depends on indication of use significant processes. Some of the processes are very important. For example, in the context of an e-commerce website, you might actually want to use or outsource your card payment or payment processing. So you're not dealing with any of the cards yourself, in which case it's called PCI, payment card industry. So you don't have to really go through all the nuances and the regulations that come under the PCI ruling, for example, to not have the anonymous details or not store the personally identifiable information of a particular card holder. So all of these details you can skip if you kind of outsource that to a third party. And then we also talk about some of the measurement study goals. So what are the kind of metrics, the measures that you would need to understand to assess how efficient this process is? So all of those are called process characteristics. And the project characteristics, you need to understand the development dates. What are the kind of, it's not, when I say dates, it's not specific dates, it's not exact, at least a rough idea in terms of when you would have this launch. And that's why, for example, you say, I would like to have it in next quarter, or perhaps in the third quarter of 2021. If the client says like that, then you can actually come back. If the business says like that, then you can come back and work your way backwards to come up with an estimate. And also the effort, total effort involved in the project, the product size, the size of the product. It's so important. We actually forget that the first thing that we start thinking in terms of estimation is the cost or it's the effort, but it's not. It's actually the size of a particular product. So we'll talk in detail about why size of work is really important. That's the first foundation for us to actually estimate, and then comes the effort and the schedule, and then finally the cost. And then we also look at some of the components. What are the components involved? What are the kind of softwares that we're using? What kind of interfaces we could actually try and have? How are we going to interact with these different interfaces? What's the kind of integration that we have to consider? So all of these are really important for us to come up with in terms of